Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Windward Buddhist Temple this morning. My name is Dharma Ti-Sarana, and I'll be your MC. We will begin with the ringing of the temple bell, or kansho, that signifies the beginning of a temple service. It is a deep and sacred ritual steeped in ancient tradition. It is a calling of the people to come together to listen to the Dharma or teachings. The temple bell represents the gratitude and deep appreciation of the members, friends, and guests of Windward Buddhist Temple. Please sit quietly in your seat. Please rise for the meditation, followed by the chanting of the Vandana Ti-Sarana by the congregation in English and Pali. Could be found in the red Jodo Shinshu service book on page 7.
Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda.
Please be seated. Today, the sutra is Sanbutsuge in the red Jodo Shinshu service book, page 47. That's the Sanbutsuge on page 47.
Gengigi Iji Mugoku Nyoze Emyo Muyo Tosha Nichiganmani Shuko Enyo Kaishinon Pe Yunyakuju Moku Nyorai Yogen Chosemurin Shogaku Daion Koruji Ko Kaimon Shojin Sanmai Chie Itokumuryo Shushokeu Shintai Zenen Shobun Hokai Gujinjino Kogo Gaitai Mumyo Yokunu Seson Yomunino Shishi Jintokumuryo Chie Jimyo Komo Iso Shindo Daisen Ganga Sabun Zai Sho Kado Shoji Shojin Yoze Sanmai Chie Ijo Gose Tokubun Fugyo Shigan Isai Kuku Isadayan Keshi Ubun Yakusen Okuman Muryo Daisho Shunyo Goja Kuyo Isai Shito Shobun Funyo Kuhinyo Goja Shobun Sekai Bubu Kake Mushu Sendo Komyo Shisho En Shisho Kok Nyoze Shojin Ijin Nanyo Yoga Sabun Kokudo Dai Goshu Kimyo Dojo Chosetsu Kokunyo Naion Nimu Toso Gato Aimin Dodasu Isai Jiporai Shoshinet Shoujo Itoga Koku Kerai Kobun Shimyo Zega Shinsho Ongan no Hi Rikisho Shoyok Jippo Seson Chiemuge Joryo Shison Chiga Shingyo Keryo Shinshi Shoku Doku Chu Kagyo Shojin Niju Ke Namandabu Namo Amida Namanda, Namanda, Namanda.
Please rise for the recitation of the Creed in the same red Jodo Shinshu book, page 4. That's the Creed. Namo Amida Butsu. Entrust yourself to me. I will liberate you
just as you are. This is the calling voice of Amida. My blind passions are embraced in the Buddha's awakening. So the Buddha calls to me. I will liberate you just as you are. Gratefully responding to the Buddha's call, I find that I am already on the path that leads to the Pure Land, and the Nembutsu flows freely from my thankful heart. It is due to the guidance of Shinran Shonin and successive spiritual leaders who have transmitted the teaching to us today. Living with the Dharma as my guide softens my rigid heart and mind. Gratitude for the gift of life I have received frees me from becoming lost in greed and anger, and allows me to share a warm smile and speak gentle words. Sharing in the joy and sadness of others, I shall strive to live each day to its fullest. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Please continue to stand today for the Gatha golden chain that was distributed on a sheet. Thank you. Please be seated. Our speaker today is our temple member, Dr. Michael Jaffe. Mike?
Okay, Ryan's going to fire up the computer here. That's great. I want to apologize first of all. My daughter had a high school party at our house last night with about 150 people showed up. She hasn't recovered. My wife and I have not recovered, and our house certainly hasn't recovered. So you'll have to bear with me as I struggle through. First of all, I am very grateful to have the privilege to give today's Dharma Talk. It is always an honor, as you know. I do like to throw a bit of science into my talks. And today we're going to have a little quantum physics. We're going to talk a little bit about human physiology, and of course we'll correlate with a lot of Buddhist teachings. There we go. So let's start with some physics. Here is a mathematical equation called the Sumikawa uncertainty principle of quantum mechanics. Now, Reverend Bert's not here, because they used to call this the Heisenberg principle, but I've renamed it in his honor. This is an equation that tells us that you cannot simultaneously identify where an object is, its position, and while it is moving. Okay, so where motion is expressed by velocity and mass or momentum. An example of this would be the fan that is not turned on. So the fan has the blades, and then you've got this empty space, right? But the minute you turn the fan on, the blades are spinning so fast that you really can't pinpoint the empty space, right? Because the blades are spinning through it, right? So we know everything's going on within the housing, but you can't pinpoint exactly what's going on. This same phenomenon happens with subatomic particles. An atom is comprised of electrons that fly around the nucleus made up of neutrons and protons. The electrons circle the nucleus of the atom very fast, so we don't really know where they are. And the distance from out here to the distance across the nucleus is like 100,000 times out from the nucleus where this electron is cruising around real fast. So, and this property allows electrons to be shared with other atoms or to bind to other atoms. So this sphere of motion that we can only guess where each electron is what creates chemistry and everything around us. I mean, that's pretty cool stuff, right? So you're asking, how does that relate to Buddhism? Well, the idea of this uncertainty, we can never pinpoint where an electron is because by the time we pinpoint it, it's already moved, right? So the idea of uncertainty parallels with the uncertainty of our ever-changing world, the idea of anicca, or impermanence, right? Which is one of the 3 marks of existence in Buddhism. So everything in the entire universe is in a constant state of motion, whether it's thoughts and sensations, or people and situations, or even subatomic particles. Now, Buddha taught us that over 2,500 years ago, before we had atomic theory. And personally, I'm very impressed with that. So, whereas impermanence is the second mark of existence, the first mark of existence is that of suffering. Suffering is an inescapable part of our lives that comes in many forms. In Buddhism, we refer to this suffering as dukkha, primordial discomfort, dissatisfaction, and unease that permeates us because we live in an impermanent world. In Buddhism, we refer to this suffering as the first noble truth. Now, I was really impressed with Neil's talk last month because he let us know a little bit about himself and his connection to the Missouri. And I thought today that I would add a little bit about us because our family are avid backpackers. So going up Mount Whitney there, this is Mount Rainier, right? So this is like some hardcore mountaineering. And that's my wife, all in the getup of mountaineering. She looks like from the planet Zork. And then this is our team of us ready to go up Mount Rainier. Now, I want to point out in this slide that my pack weighs about 80 pounds because it has a lot of safety equipment. And although I'm smiling, I'm really suffering here, okay? In Buddhism, the cause of suffering is not only 80-pound backpacks, but it is caused by our desires or wants. This is the second noble truth of Buddhism. As practitioners of Buddhism, our task is to lessen our suffering by controlling our desires. Let's take a closer look at how our brains distinguish those healthy desires that help us become who we want to be and those desires that prevent us from seeing things as they really are, or those desires that harm us, such as the ones that lead to addiction. Okay, so I am sure that a lot of you here in the audience are asking, Dr. Jaffe, what chemical in our brain is responsible for our wants and desires? Well, it is the chemical dopamine. Okay, now dopamine is a chemical that gives us drive to do things. It gives us motivation to go after our desires. It helps us plan our pursuits for our desires. It even gives us confidence that we're going to get what we want. So it's a very powerful chemical in our brain. Now, dopamine is produced in the inner reaches of our brainstem, kind of in the lizard portion of our brain called the substantia nigra. The primordial lizard part of our brain. Through a chemical pathway, it directs the front portion of our brain. Now, this frontal cortex area, this is what really separates us out from the animal kingdom. This is our ability to reason and to think and to work things out, okay? This frontal cortex. So the front of our brain is very important. It's highly developed part of our brain, and it's the area that sets us apart from the animal kingdom, as I mentioned. The frontal cortex is the area where our wants and desires are formed, and the part that reasons out how we're going to satisfy those desires. Now, the way dopamine works is like a seesaw. When we think we want something, say a spam musubi, our levels of dopamine actually go up. An increase in desire equals increased dopamine. Now, here's the interesting part. Once we get what we want, there is a reciprocal drop of our dopamine levels. So if we get what we want, our dopamine seesaw actually dips down. It doesn't just go back to neutral, right? It doesn't go back to the baseline. Below the this is called a dopamine trough down here, okay? And it lasts for a little while, and then it recalibrates back to normal dopamine base levels. This dip before returning to baseline is probably a developmental response that pushes humans to be innovative and push for more. I suspect this is how the Musubi Cafe came about. This dopamine deficit creates motivation. Now, under normal circumstances, all is good. But there is a glitch in the system. Let me demonstrate. Let's say I'm hungry for a Chick-fil-A sandwich. And by the way, there's a new drive-thru at the corner of Baratania and Pensacola Street. As we discussed, my dopamine seesaw tips to a peak as I am motivated to pull into the drive-thru and pick up a Chick-fil-A Spicy Deluxe. Once I've had the sandwich, my seesaw drops back down a little bit below normal, and after some time, after a few hours, it'll settle back to normal again. Now, here is where we get into trouble. It gets entered into the mechanism. Let's say I'm craving a Chick-fil-A on a Sunday. My dopamine seesaw goes up and I pull into the drive-thru only to find the restaurant is closed on Sundays. And what is up with that? Well, my disappointment makes my dopamine seesaw dip into an even deeper trough than the normal rebound. This lower dip of the seesaw, my disappointment, now actually causes me some pain. Not just hunger pains, but actually desire pains. And this is where the problems start. So small troughs of dopamine motivate us to be patient for our wants, but large dips or large troughs of dopamine of the seesaw make us want things and not be so patient because it hurts. This is where addictions and dependencies begin. So we get below this certain threshold here into the red line, and it's much harder to control ourselves. We really want to get that dopamine level back up. When the dopamine trough dips below a certain threshold, this is where the three poisons of Buddhism jump on the seesaw. They're like little gremlins, and they weigh it down even further. This dopamine deficit creates our desire. Our own three poisons tell us in our frontal cortex to seek out immediate relief of the painful state by cravings and actions that bring our dopamine levels up quickly so we can climb out of a painful state. Now, here's a painful state that Linda and I got our daughter Jenna to climb Mount Whitney at age 9. She was one of the youngest kids to summit the tallest mountain in the continental U.S., and she did an amazing job. There she is at the top. Trust me, she is suffering. Looking back at the seesaw, we see, looking back at the seesaw, we see the three poisons are not the only thing that pushes us over the line of imbalance. Today's fast-paced life of excess, as we have a profound effect on our modern-day society. We are surrounded by pleasures all the time. Streaming media, Amazon purchases, the internet, fast food, social media, YouTube videos, our smartphones, and really our capitalistic society that we are always trying to keep up with the Joneses. Our lifestyles of physiologic pleasure keep us below our baseline of dopamine all the time, okay, with a resultant physiologic craving for more. This dopamine-depleted state leads us to feeling anxious, irritable, and depressed, as well as in pain. In other words, suffering. There's a new book out by Ann Lebsky. She is a psychiatrist at Stanford, and she calls this the plenty paradox, where almost anything is available at the touch of a button. Our pleasure-pain balance is always in a dopamine state because we're getting so much dopaminergic stimulation all the time. Now our bodies really want to get back to a balanced seesaw, and actually the seesaw will return if we wait. But it is quicker for us to just consume more. Thus the three poisons get bigger. They camp out on the downsloping side of our seesaw for an indefinite amount of time. If the three poisons hang out too long, our brain's set point changes so that we need more desires to satisfy just to get our balance of dopamine back to even. Over time, we need more of our substances to just feel normal. This is what we see with people who have addiction. They're just want to just feel normal. They don't even want to get high or euphoric. They just want to feel okay. So over time, this is while we have, that is, we have a physiologic change in our brains and are now walking around tilted to the side of pain, anxiety, irritability, craving, depression, and insomnia. To ease this pain and suffering, we now seek high reward substances and behaviors. Okay, we know where my weaknesses are. Okay, and I do want to, they know us so much over there, they got our license plate hanging up in the restaurant. Okay, so I do want to make quick mention of addiction, that when a dramatic increase in dopamine over a very short period of time, let's say with illegal drugs, there is this euphoric feeling. This triggers a very fast drop in dopamine into a large trough below the normal trough baseline, and this leads to doing whatever it takes to get more, and it eventually leads to financial, social, and relationships being ruined. And so the power of addiction is very strong. It's based on this dopamine seesaw. Now, there is a happy side to dopamine, ups and downs. It seems Buddha's teachings demonstrate a profound understanding of human psychology and behavior. As we have illustrated, the three poisons of greed, hatred, and ignorance are the cause of suffering. Buddha offered an antidote for these ubiquitous threats. For greed, he suggests generosity. For hatred, he suggests loving kindness and compassion. For delusion, he suggests the possibility of waking up every morning to accurate experiences of reality. For me, that's listening to NPR. Okay, science, right, Sue? All day long, basically. Okay, science has also looked at ways to slowly elevate our dopamine levels out of a deficit state and help relieve our suffering. Okay, so healthy dopamine levels can be increased by good quality sleep, healthy eating habits, getting like 5 to 20 minutes of sunlight every day, which is pretty easy here. And it's shown that the sunlight early in the morning is the most important. Exercising 5 days per week, a minimum of 20 minutes, people. And it's okay to split it up. You can do 5 here, 10 there, but trying to get a minimum of 20 minutes of exercise. And lastly, 5 to 10 minutes of mindfulness. Not necessarily meditation, but just to focus on the here and now helps elevate our levels of dopamine. So, this is really interesting stuff. We can kind of fight that plenty paradox. So, I do want to, before we close up today's talk, I do want to leave you with some small life lessons on how we can use our dopamine seesaw to our advantage. We can use this seesaw to not just, to help us not procrastinate and to actually motivate ourselves to do things. Okay, so here's, a couple of months ago, I took my son Cade up a one-day assault of Mauna Kea. We hiked from the ranger station at 9,000 feet straight up to the summit at 13,800. And I can assure you, he was really suffering. Okay? So how do we use this, put this dopamine pathway to good use? Well, we can use our understanding of the dopamine seesaw to overcome procrastination, to help us achieve our goals like conquering a big mountain. Turns out we can do this. The answer is yes. First, we need to have a good mindset about what we want to achieve. If we have a desire, we become motivated. Finally, we need to have confidence. We can achieve our goals through confidence, understanding that we may not get it the first time, and it may take a lot longer than we want to, but that achieving our goals, even though it takes longer, it's difficult, that we can do it. So having that confidence is really important. As we discussed, to keep our dopamine levels maximized, we need to take care of ourselves. Practice good health behaviors with sleep, exercise, good eating habits, and of course, just overall good self-care. Now, here's a trick. If there's something we need to get done, but feel it is too difficult, or we just are not in the mood to do it, right? Perhaps our dopamine levels may be just a little down at the time. And just waiting a little bit, wait a few hours, or even wait a day, can bring those dopamine levels just back up with some time, and we get motivated to do it. So don't beat yourself up. Maybe it just needs a little time. During that time, however, it's important to keep ourselves busy with replacement activities, such as cleaning the house or our cars, or just completing a small task around the house to busy ourselves. Now, if there's something we really need to get done, and we're just not feeling motivated, we can actually fool that dopamine system, okay? Doing something that's more painful than actually the task at hand that will actually motivate us to do the task, right? So for example, this is beautiful Mount Shasta in Northern California. And here is my daughter, Bryn. And you can look, I don't know if you can see the look of her face. She is having a lot of fun. But this is, we're going up the mountain here, and there she is with her ice axe and her crampons, and this is our campsite. But needless to say, she was also suffering. But the bottom line is, I was describing, if we pick a job that you hate to do around the house, be sure enough to get what it will do will help you get your dopamine return to baseline sooner, right? Because when we start, it is the dopamine seesaw working in reverse. If we push ourselves down into a dopamine trough, we'll have a small dopamine peak when you stop doing that painful activity. This can motivate you to get that other job done. You have essentially motivated your brain to return to baseline. There we go. So, a second trick, if you don't like let's say you don't like cleaning the kitty litter box, is try 5 minutes of hard exercise. Just 5 minutes can help motivate you, right? So, a bunch of push-ups or a run around the block. This again leverages the painful activity to reset your dopamine balance. Remember, this exercise has to take you out of your comfort zone a little bit. It's got to be a little painful. Now, I'd love to see Barbara drop down and give me 10 push-ups. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Just something real quick. It's got to hurt. It will help your dopamine reset so you get that tough job you've been procrastinating done. I've got 2 other tricks. A third trick is very popular in the fitness media. It's called cold immersion therapy. And it has been shown to increase dopamine levels for up to 4 hours at a time. How? You can just take a cold shower. Now, my wife has been telling me to take cold showers for the past 20 years. Although I'm not sure if she was focused so much on my baseline of dopamine. If you really want to get into it, though, you can fill a tub full of ice and sit in it for just 1 minute, okay? It's very painful, but you'll see a lot of the sports-minded people are really getting into this cold immersion therapy. It's really a hot topic right now to increase our dopamine levels and get us out of the big deficits that we're in. And then lastly, 5 to 10 minutes of mindfulness or meditation can, especially for those who find meditation difficult and challenging, again, increase those dopamine levels. Okay, so understanding our desires and wants and leveraging uncomfortable activities can really be put to use for our betterment. See, so in summary, the more we chase pleasures, the more we find ourselves in a dopamine-depleted state. This opens us up for the slippery slope of the 3 poisons: desires, hatred, and ignorance. By creating a barrier between us and our desires, we can reset our dopamine seesaws. By setting times for your indulgences, such as limiting the amount of video games or social networking that we're doing, we can focus more on living healthier lives. And science has taught us, pay for your dopamine up front with some healthy discomfort. As tolerated, healthy discomfort will upregulate our healing dopamine mechanisms, making us more resilient and robust, and resets us to the side of pleasure, finding dopamine balance in our lives. Buddha taught us that lasting happiness could not be found by pursuing desires in a relentless fashion. So he has called on us to seek the middle way. Namo me Nembutsu. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Mike, for that lesson. We learned a lot today. Please rise for the Gatha, Becoming Free, on page 20 of the Brown Praises of the Buddha book. Page 20, Becoming Free. And remain standing for the Nembutsu.
as the sun shines upon the earth, awakening into growth the seeds that lie dormant in the soil, may the light of wisdom shine into our minds and truly awaken us to our ignorance. May the light of compassion warm the innate humanity in our hearts so that we may truly appreciate and respect the dignity of all human life. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, Namanda, Namanda.
Thank you. That brings our service to an end today, and we have announcements now. Dennis?
Good morning, everyone. Boy, another beautiful day. Thank you, Reverend Barbara, for leading our service, Merle, our MC, Prudence for being our greeter, Joy for playing the piano, Neil for ringing the kansho, and of course Ryan for doing our video. Today's refreshment is provided by Team A, that's Lisa's group. We do have a guest today, Sue Earls, a friend of Mike. Please stand, Sue. Welcome. Today's service is the last one for this first half of the year. There won't be any services in August, and we'll resume regular services September 3rd. If you haven't already signed up, we are visiting Moilili Honganji next Sunday, the 6th of August. Please see me after the service and we can add you to the list. And I want to make sure those of you that will be going, I wanted to just make sure who's catching the bus that Stan will be providing and driving. And don't forget to take along your passport. I only got 2 more temples to go, and Moilili is one of them. That's why I planned the trip. Okay, Reverend Bert will be leading a Dharma class again, adult Dharma classes during September and October. A flyer has been posted on the bulletin board, and I do have a sign-up sheet in the back there. The meditation sessions will continue during August. And if you haven't already signed up for the Nembutsu seminar that's held August 12th, 2 Saturdays from now, there's a flyer again posted on the bulletin board. It's a free seminar presented by Reverend Umezu of the West Los Angeles Buddhist Temple. It can be attended in person at the Buddhist Study Center or by Zoom. In October, the first Saturday in October, we will again co-host the Windward Mall Bon Dance. We should call it Windward Buddhist Mall Dance or something. But along with Kaneohe Higashi Honganji, and of course the Windward Mall itself will be co-sponsoring it. We will, of course, again prepare and sell fresh andagi. We will have other food items like manju and maybe takwang. I'm not sure what's going to be ready. But there will be some non-food items as well. We'll be asking for volunteer sign-ups during September. We received a card in the mail, and I'd like to read it and share it with you. It says, "Dear Reverend Barbara and Dennis and all of Windward Sangha, thank you as always for sharing your services with us via YouTube. Thank you, Ryan, for your excellent technical skills. We look forward to the day we visit you in person. And if you are ever in San Francisco, please look us up." This is signed by Chris Diani and Steve McCallum. Yeah, it was a nice cart. Prudence has an announcement, and then Cynthia also.
Good morning. Just a reminder, even if we don't have services next month, we will still have our Bon Fitness classes. And that's the second and fourth Fridays of the month. So just a reminder. So that's August 11th and August 25th, okay, at 1:30. Thank you.
Good morning. Now, I know you're going to not be here on in August. So this is an early show and tell, what we're doing in September. Okay, September, what is that, 3rd? Is our first Sunday. And so you see these little things? So this is what we'll be making. And Joanne in the back is the one that has the talent in this. So she will be guiding us in making these things. Okay? So we'll write it up, I think, in the newsletter, just as a reminder. But that's the thing for September. But I also wanted to share one more thing. Last week, Reverend Barbara was talking about what we can do to save the earth or whatever. And I want to share with you this information that I received many years ago when I went to a Buddhist Study Center summer session. Now, don't tell me what I learned about the Dharma. I don't remember. But I do remember that the minister said he was all into saving water. And he talked about the site called Imagine All the Water, that would remind you of how much water you're using even when you're not taking a bath or brushing your teeth. It's sponsored by the European Commission. The site brings together a mind-boggling array of estimates about the overall amount of water required to create everyday consumer products. Though the site's purpose is advocacy, essentially to scare us into water conservation mindset, it also offers a useful reminder of how crazily resource-intensive the most ordinary objects can be. Now, these are some of the things he was listed. Do you know that one pair of shoes requires 2,257 gallons of water? One pair of jeans, 2,636 gallons. One chocolate bar, 454 gallons. One piece of beef, 4,000 gallons. One hamburger, 632 gallons. And they go on, and even one cup of coffee requires 35 gallons of water to produce it. I guess they're counting from the time you grow the coffee and all that. And one sheet of paper requires 3 gallons. And so what he was into was he never throws away papers. Even if the backside can be used, if there's nothing personal on this side, he saves it. So that's the only thing I remember from the whole summer session. Terrible. But anyway, so I save paper. You know, sometimes when you're in a computer and you make a mistake, or sometimes I collect all the small programs and I take it home and I put it together and make little scratch pads. So some of them have, you know, half is white, and I save those. So there's a whole box full in the back. Please help yourself if you want the scratch pads. But that's my contribution to try to save water.
Any other announcements? And I apologize, I didn't thank Mike for his message. I think I'm smarter now. But yeah, should I increase my dopamine? Okay, otherwise it's time for refreshments. Let's do the words of thanksgiving, which can be found on page 126 of the Red Service Book. We are truly grateful for this wonderful food, a gift of life. May we share its benefits with all beings. As we partake of this food, let us remember Amida Buddha's compassion, which surrounds all people and all forms of life. Namo Amida Butsu. Itadakimasu. Have a great summer, everybody.